Mr. Looi Kheong, Head of the Competition, Consumer Protection and Intellectual Property Rights Division of the ASEAN Secretariat, to come to make the concluding remarks for our UK ASEAN IP Enforcement webinar series. Over to you, Mr. Looi.
Good afternoon from Jakarta, and good morning to those in the UK. Thank you very much, Desmond. Your Excellency, Karen Owen, British High Commissioner to Singapore, representatives of the UK IPO, DG Rawal Baba of IFOFIL, distinguished speakers, distinguished delegates and colleagues. I'd like to thank the British government for supporting this webinar series under the UK Prosperity Fund. I'd also like to thank the UK IPO, Desmond, Rory, and Christabel for organizing this webinar. The UK ASEAN IP Enforcement webinar series, part 1 on digital piracy, and part 2 on e-commerce is a success. There is so much that we have learned. We have learned how pirates are using trusted search engines instead of darknet to carry out digital piracy, from Philip Davis in his session engaging with internet service providers and payment providers in combating digital piracy. We have also learned how notice and takedown procedures will be used to individual hosting structures in a massive scale to disrupt digital piracy. We also note that this will only cause pirates to move to other hosting structures located in more challenging jurisdictions. In the UK's approach to digital piracy by Dave Long, we note the approach to combat digital piracy is a holistic one that involves IP education, development, collaboration, and all stakeholders, both private and public partnership in both civil and criminal jurisdiction, to develop respect for IP, and that digital piracy is a threat, not just to rights holders, but also to consumers. That supporting digital piracy and in fact supporting organized crime, and so it is not a victimless threat. We note from the session on TV spots, films, and piracy by Eddie Levington that a good content protection strategy involves not just notice and takedown, intelligence gathering, enforcement, prosecution, site blocking, and piracy insurance, but also an effective PR and communication strategy to publicize the work done in combating digital piracy through media, online TV, radio, and social media are critical. And we learned a thing or two about stream ripping on the session on online music piracy by Jenny Wong and Oliver Walsh, on how audio can be extracted from a licensed site and uploaded to individual device, and once recorded, licensed sites have no control on the file. And this results in unfair competition with licensed services and will reduce subscriptions revenue, harming the economy as it reduces tax revenues. When the licensed services struggle, local platforms will take jobs out of the market as well. We also had a session on judicial and administrative site blocking by Neil Gain. We saw how Malaysia and Indonesia can become success stories in collaboration between private and public partnership in carrying out enforcement proceedings, and the importance of using fast-track blocking order and sustaining rolling site blocking so that it will continuously suppress pirate traffic. This has resulted in drop in pirate activities and migrated consumer to legal sites. We are fortunate at the panel discussions moderated by Rory Corcoran, Interpol Acting Assistant Director of the Interpol. And we note that global piracy is competing against drug, human trafficking, and terrorism. It is therefore important to tie digital piracy to organized crimes and not to be viewed as an isolated criminal activity, in order to procure sufficient public and government support to combat these challenges. On part 2 of the e-commerce webinar series, Combating Counterfeits in E-commerce, we note the observation of Her Excellency Kara Ovens that criminals are intelligent, agile, and informed. And to fight that, the stakeholders like ourselves would likewise have to be well equipped. We also note that under protecting intellectual property rights on e-commerce platforms, the UK's perspective, how what are the strategic steps that have to be taken to deal with the pandemic crisis in order to ensure that, in order to cope with a significant shift in consumer behavior. We also note what Mike Andrews mentioned about the social media influencers impact and how using dropshipping model could cause and impact purchasers' buying behavior. So online investigation on e-commerce platforms. We need to ensure that this off-grid device in order to carry out online investigation on e-commerce platform, we also know quite a few steps and tips in order to carry them out as well. And on country sharing, we are fortunate to learn from Singapore on the guidelines for e-commerce transactions, what are their TR for processes and policies for e-commerce transactions ranging from browsing to completion and post-purchase activities for e-retailers, merchants, e-marketplace customers, transparent products sold, and easy understanding customers. We also learned from the Philippines, safeguarding and the new IP Code Act on safeguarding digital IP rights through a whole nation approach. Best practices in IP enforcement from the Philippines and their 2019-2022 Enforcement Action Plan. Charmaine Laurel showed us how the challenges are faced in the online e-commerce sectors by sellers, and also the unauthorized use of their logos and counterfeits from parallel importers. We also note the importance of usage of customs record system, how sharing of information by customs to in-country enforcement agencies could become critical and helpful. And Joyce Ang shared with us the role of e-commerce platforms in enforcing intellectual property rights from the perspective of Lazada. And in this, we note the four pillars for Lazada, and also the four pillars, and also the technology-driven governance, which introduced the IPP platform, the IPP pilot program, and also the Project Shield, proactive monitoring supplement, which supplements IPP filing. And finally, at the panel discussion, we note the concerns which the panel members have expressed, and how much more that the region can do. And in this, very quickly, we could also say that other than the action plan and enforcement action plan, we also have the ASEAN IP integration framework, the digital integration framework action plan, which provides coordination mechanism to enhance enforcement of intellectual property in the digital environment. So in the final analysis, I think there's still very much more work to do. So it's so important that enforcement authorities in the region come together to enhance the capacity and the understanding of the nature of how these criminal activities are done. And a lot of such enhancing capacities are also being done in the ASEAN sector as well. And to think out of the box, how such strategies can be used to solve and manage these challenges. Once again, thank you very much, UK IPO, for organizing this website. And I hope the delegates will be able to apply the new lessons obtained under this series and use them for the purposes of their respective roles back in their home countries. Thank you very much.
Right, so thank you, Mr. Looi, for this excellent concluding remarks. So ladies and gentlemen,